Coming out should be a choice, not a headline. But for some young stars, the world didn't wait. Before they were ready, before they even understood themselves, the internet had already decided who they were. In this episode of Rainbow Spotlight, we're looking at 5 gay celebrities who were outed too soon. Not by scandal, but by silence stolen. From TikTok heartthrobs to rising actors, these are the faces we scrolled past, thirsted over, and labeled before they had a chance to speak. And while some took control of the narrative, others are still reclaiming it. This isn't just about gossip. It's about consent. Visibility is powerful, but only when it's on your terms. So let's talk about the 5 names behind the pressure, the posts, and the pain. Where are you watching from? Drop your country below. We see you. Josh Richards, the party boy who got queer-baited by his own fans. Josh Richards didn't come out. He didn't hint, suggest, or even joke. But the internet didn't care. He smiled too long at another guy on a live stream, wore too many rings, danced a little too confidently in a TikTok collab, and suddenly he was trending on gay Twitter. With the body of a gym bro and the face of a frat boy heartthrob, Josh became one of TikTok's most recognizable male creators at the height of Hype House era fame. Millions followed him for his thirst traps, his shirtless dances, his chaotic energy. But somewhere along the way, his image stopped being just hot and started being interpreted. Josh Richards is definitely bi. Why does he have more chemistry with guys than girls? Tell me Josh isn't queer-coded. He became a meme, a fantasy, and eventually, whether he liked it or not, a queer icon. Not because he said anything, but because fans wouldn't stop speculating. His friendship with Bryce Hall was analyzed like a ship from a Netflix series. Every eye contact, every hug, every accidental touch turned into a viral TikTok with thousands of comments like, or just kiss already. But here's the twist. Josh never labeled himself, never hinted at anything, and when asked, he'd deflect or laugh it off. Not in a mocking way, more like someone who knew the internet had built a version of him he didn't quite recognize and didn't know how to fight. It's easy to assume someone with Josh's confidence, looks, and following is unfazed. But being projected on constantly, especially about something as personal as sexuality, isn't harmless. It's invasive. And while many fans meant it as support or harmless thirst, it became something else entirely: pressure. What Josh experienced wasn't a classic outing. It was a cultural one, the kind where the internet builds a whole identity around you without consent. It's subtle, slow, and often framed as just jokes, but it chips away at autonomy, and it puts creators, especially young men, into impossible corners. If you confirm, you're finally being honest. If you deny, you're lying or ashamed. Either way, you lose control. And that's the real problem, not whether Josh Richards is gay, bi, straight, or something in between, but that we didn't give him the space to say, or not say, on his own terms. To this day, Josh hasn't publicly come out. He's still just Josh, dancing, podcasting, posting thirst traps, and maybe flirting with everyone just a little bit. But if he ever is ready to share more, it should be because he wants to, not because the internet demanded it. Drop a 3 if you've ever seen a Josh and Bryce edit and pause longer than you meant to. We won't tell. Benji Krol, the soft boy who had to say it before he was ready. Benji Krol built his brand on softness, the kind of softness that makes you trust someone immediately, the kind that says, "I'll hold your secrets and maybe cry with you a little." With his big brown eyes, painted nails, and boy-next-door charm, he became one of TikTok's original soft boys, inviting, expressive, vulnerable, in a way that felt real. But what made Benji magnetic is also what made him a target. His aesthetic didn't fit the rigid mold of straight masculinity, and fans, especially queer fans, ran with it. Early in his TikTok rise, people began labeling him. He's clearly gay. He's bi for sure. Benji, just say it already. His comment sections filled with speculation disguised as support, obsession wrapped in curiosity. And the deeper truth? He hadn't figured it all out himself yet. Then came the scandal. In 2020, a leaked situation involving personal messages, accusations, and deeply misunderstood dynamics pushed Benji into an emotional spiral. While much of the drama centered around privacy, it also became a moment of forced exposure. Overnight, fans weren't just questioning his orientation. They were demanding clarity, as if he owed them an answer, as if his identity belonged to the public. So Benji did what so many young creators are pressured into doing. He explained himself. Not because he was ready, but because the internet wouldn't stop guessing. He shared that he was bisexual, that he was still exploring, that he didn't want to be boxed in, but also didn't want to be erased. And while his honesty was met with love from many, it came from a place of defense, not celebration. What made it harder was that Benji had always been emotionally open. His content wasn't built on perfection, it was built on being human. And when your brand is vulnerability, the world starts thinking they deserve every piece of you, even the ones you're still trying to understand. Benji's coming out wasn't loud or polished, it was messy, emotional, and painfully public. And that's what makes it real. Because for so many queer people, coming out isn't a moment, it's a negotiation with your friends, your family, your followers, with who you are and who they want you to be. Today, Benji still posts, still paints his nails, still smiles that crooked smile that says, "I've been through things, but I'm still soft." And in doing so, he's reclaiming what was almost taken from him, the right to own his story. He didn't come out on his terms, but he kept showing up anyway. And sometimes, that's braver than anything. Drop a 2 if Benji ever made you feel seen, before he even felt safe. Elmo O'Dwyer, the TikTok heartthrob who couldn't hide, even when he tried. Elmo O'Dwyer didn't ask to be a queer fantasy, but TikTok made him one anyway. With his razor-sharp jawline, piercing stare, and bad boy energy wrapped in rings and tattoos, Elmo became the kind of guy who could post a 5-second lip sync and suddenly have half the internet projecting their most private daydreams onto him. But here's the catch. He never said anything. He never labeled himself. And yet, for years, fans, especially queer ones, decided for him. At the height of TikTok's thirst trap wave, Elmo was one of the most reblogged, edited, and speculated creators on the app. His duet videos with other boys were dissected frame by frame. His shirtless clips racked up millions of likes, not just because of his looks, but because of the energy, soft, sulky, sometimes suggestive. And that was enough for fans to start asking, is he gay? Bi? Just playing into it? He didn't answer, but the internet didn't wait. On Twitter, people called him queer-coded. On TikTok, he was part of the gay panic trend. And in YouTube comment sections, you'd see things like, he's definitely one of us, just not ready to admit it. Some said it with love, some with entitlement. But either way, it wasn't on his terms. The truth is, Elmo was still a teenager when all this happened. Figuring yourself out is already confusing. Doing it while the whole world is watching, guessing, and labeling you before you can even finish the sentence? That's a different kind of pressure. And while Elmo never publicly came out, the weight of being perceived as queer, accurately or not, shaped how he was treated online. He became a gay icon by default. People romanticized his silence, turned it into a brand, and filled the blanks for him. But silence isn't always mystery. Sometimes it's protection. What makes Elmo's story stand out isn't that he was caught doing something scandalous. It's that he was doing almost nothing, just existing, just vibing, and still, the internet needed an answer. He's since pulled back from the spotlight, posting less frequently, focusing more on real life than curated image. And maybe that's a kind of reclaiming, too. A quiet way of saying, I don't owe you my truth. Elmo O'Dwyer reminds us that attraction doesn't equal access, that reading someone's energy doesn't give us permission to write their story, and that being visible doesn't mean you're ready to be seen. Drop a 1 if you ever paused one of his videos just to breathe. And if you still don't know his label, maybe that's the point. Dylan Geick, the wrestling star, who got spotlighted before he was ready. Dylan Geick didn't fit the mold, and that made him unforgettable. A star high school wrestler with Greek statue looks, sharp intellect, and a love for poetry. The internet wasn't ready, and neither was he. At just 17, Dylan went viral not for a scandal, not for a stunt, but simply for being himself, a nationally ranked wrestler who was openly gay. A teen who could take down opponents on the mat, then write about heartbreak in his notebook afterward. His presence online felt revolutionary, raw, vulnerable, proud, and for many queer teens, he became an instant hero. But there's something we often forget about heroes. Sometimes they're still kids. What few people saw behind the virality was just how quickly the world forced Dylan to become a symbol. Almost overnight, he wasn't just Dylan from English class. He was Dylan Geick, the gay athlete, the face of a movement he didn't ask to lead. And while he did come out publicly, the pressure didn't end there. It started. Suddenly, every post had to be polished. Every relationship was dissected. Every mistake, every pause, every "maybe I'm still figuring it out" moment was treated like betrayal or proof. The internet didn't just watch Dylan grow up, it demanded he grow up perfectly. And that kind of visibility can feel more like surveillance than celebration. For Dylan, being out wasn't the problem. It was being owned by the narrative. In interviews, people asked him to speak for all gay athletes. On social media, strangers told him how to dress, who to date, how to behave. He was no longer allowed to question himself because he had become everyone else's answer. And through it all, Dylan stayed present. He kept writing, he kept posting. But you could feel the shift. His captions became more layered, his gaze more guarded, like someone who'd given the world a little too much, a little too soon. Eventually, he took a step back. He stopped centering his sexuality online, stopped feeding the version of himself people had built. And that was powerful too. Because visibility isn't just about being seen, it's about choosing how you're seen and when. Dylan Geick was never outed by scandal. He was outed by assumption, by celebration that turned into ownership, by a community that meant well but didn't always let him breathe. And yet, through it all, he still showed up with honesty, grace, and a softness that defied the masculine stereotypes he'd been expected to uphold. He taught us that even icons deserve privacy, that even brave kids are still kids, and that sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all until you're ready. Drop a 4 if Dylan ever made you feel stronger just by existing out loud. Koch, the queer actor who got typecast before he got to speak. Koch didn't walk into Hollywood waving a rainbow flag. He walked in with a camera-ready jawline, piercing eyes, and a quiet intensity that made casting directors lean in. But before he could say anything, the internet and the industry spoke for him. After starring in They, Them, and Swallowed, 2 indie projects deeply rooted in queer narratives, Cooper quickly became that hot gay actor in online spaces. Tumblr GIFs, TikTok thirst edits, Reddit threads asking, "Is he one of us?" all exploded before he ever gave an interview about who he was. And in a matter of months, a private young actor became public queer property, whether he liked it or not. Here's the thing, Cooper played those roles beautifully. Sensitive, layered, human. He brought nuance to characters who, in other hands, might have felt tokenized. But while critics praised his performance, fans turned it into proof. Proof that no straight man could have played those parts that well. Proof that his on-screen vulnerability had to come from lived experience. Proof that he was definitely gay, and just waiting for the right podcast to say it out loud. But Cooper stayed quiet. Not dismissive, not closeted, just quiet. And that's when the internet got louder. Because silence to many reads like denial. And in queer culture, we're often so hungry for visibility, we forget about permission. Cooper's face became a symbol before his voice had a chance to catch up. Every time he stepped onto a red carpet, fans looked for clues. Queer TikTok turned his interviews into decoding sessions. Was he looking at the male co-star too long? Did he avoid saying no when asked about his type? And the pressure wasn't just online. Within industry circles, his name began circulating in perfect for queer role lists. Great for prestige. Great for fan base. But quietly, there was a price. The assumption that his sexual identity was a marketing tool waiting to be used. Cooper never pushed back. He didn't need to. By simply continuing to act with honesty and withholding what wasn't ready to be shared, he took control in the most understated way possible. In interviews, he speaks about his characters, their emotions, the themes that matter. But not about himself, not yet, and maybe he will one day, or maybe he won't. Either way, the truth is this. Being great at telling queer stories doesn't mean you owe the world your own. Cooper Koch didn't get outed in the traditional sense, but he was boxed in by assumption, celebrated too quickly, labeled too easily, and that too is a form of erasure, just wearing a friendlier mask. Drop a 5 if you believe queer storytelling should come with space, not speculation. Being visible is powerful, but being forced to be visible? That's a different story. These 5 young men didn't choose to make headlines for who they were. They were pushed, guessed, labeled, and dissected before they ever had the chance to say, "This is me," if they even wanted to. In a world obsessed with knowing everything, it's easy to forget that privacy is not shame. Silence isn't denial. And coming out isn't a performance. It's a process. So the next time the internet thinks it's figured someone out, maybe we pause, maybe we wait, maybe we listen. Which story hit you the hardest? Drop a 1 to 5 below and tell us whose journey stayed with you. This is Rainbow Spotlight, where we let people speak on their own terms.